Do you support reparations for Black people? Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. So, as you already stated, Vice President Kamala Harris did answer the question. She answered the question. She basically stating that anything she's going to do for Black Americans, she's going to do for the entire country. Now, we understand America as a republic democracy has given groups reparations. And the two most notable groups are the Native Americans as well as Jewish people who was fleeing the Nazi regime in Germany. So when we look at this family, I just want to go over a couple of the comments over here. User states, why don't these interviewers make them answer the questions they ask? She did answer the question. She says she's not doing anything specifically for Black folk. Maggie, who I would like to believe is a Caucasian woman, love Kamala. Why isn't she being seen more? She has wonderful ideas, always have. A lot of us stated that the new generation are the ones who are kicking in the door on the Democratic Party because they're understanding the benign neglect, not even benign neglect, the public display of disrespect of not giving what you owe. Lala Woodson states, 22-year-old here, and it truly baffles me how all adults 21 to 60 years of age who pick these MFs, now they're not doing what we want, they need to go. And I agree. They will never do anything that just benefits Black people, says Henry the Cracker. Slavery was the event that did the most harm, which happened only to Black people, which is absolutely correct. And of course, user here with the white beard, no Black person living is oppressed. Get out of here. It's not about being oppressed now, and we still live in a system of white supremacy, which is an oppressive system, so that's inaccurate as well. You being a white man may not understand that, but nonetheless, it's about restorative justice, about restoring the atrocities that this country has put upon our people that put us in a permanent underclass. I digress. I think it's only right Black families should receive a weekly stipend, just like the Jews receive reparations stipends. I believe that's what she's asked. Now, family, what we have to understand is many might wonder why not voting is an important and revolutionary tactic, which is about apathy, but a strategic assertion of our power. In a nation where our ancestors were systematically oppressed, we need a new way to shift the balance of power, and not voting sends a very, very powerful message, forcing the system to address the historic injustices faced by Black Americans. Some people stated before civil rights that black people wasn't voting and nothing significantly happened for them. But family, we're still in the same conditions that we were prior to the civil rights movement and during the civil rights movement and current state today. So we have to look at all of these. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that's going to come up with their own strategies and perspective. And just as well as Kamala Harris has done, and we're going to look at a small clip with Pete Buttigieg as well as Joe Biden in their response to reparations. And it's always starting off as the atrocities and all the things that this country has done to black people. See, we can state all the things that the Nazis done to Jewish people. We can state all the things that the American Pilgrims done to the Native Americans. And these two aggrieved groups have received and are still receiving reparations. But when it comes to black folk, none of the people current today are being oppressed. But the current people who are still living today who are receiving reparation has not been oppressed either. But we can say religious persecution, racial persecution that has occurred on a very large scale to black people around the world, but most specifically to black Americans who was ripped from their homeland of Africa in some regards, brought over, enslaved, whipped, killed, murmured, raped, hung, dismembered, etc. But now we want to talk about the historical injustices and then state that, you're not being oppressed, but we see the examples of other groups getting paid who is receiving reparations who are not themselves, quote unquote, not oppressed. Black people in the United States, we have had a history of being disenfranchised and being denied our very basic rights. And they want to keep putting up this trope of the right to vote. Okay, we got the right to vote through the power of the Constitution, which was never written for us in the first place, but some people will state that the 14th, 15th, et cetera, give us these rights. But we're still fighting for the right to vote, even though we're voting, even though these votes had helped Obama to become president, as well as Joe Biden. And even if we dated back to Bill Clinton, all these presidents who had the majority vote of black people have been selected and elected president of these United States of America. So let's stop stating that we're still fighting for the right to vote and that somehow voter IDs are discriminatory towards black people. No, there isn't. You need an ID for everything. And I agree that you should have an ID as you're going to vote for the most powerful position in the world, which is United States of American presidency. Now, many black people today are choosing not to vote. And family, I'm gonna let the cat off the bag. This is good. I know a lot of you are gonna disagree, but hear me out. This is a form of protest against the systematic racism and the injustice that we face today. And people choosing not to vote because they don't believe that the system is fair. And this is not necessarily a belief. This was actually written in the laws. If you read any book essentially by Dr. Claude Anderson, then you will understand that the laws that were enacted during a time of great hardship for our people, then you will understand this is not something that we're just conjuring up and that we must believe. This is a fact. This is a systematic fact. So you may not believe that your vote doesn't make a difference. And that's why they're putting out their Democratic shields in order for you guys to come back to the voting booths and vote Democrat once again. Do not forget the meeting that Dr. Martin Luther King had with Lyndon B. Johnson that had black people voting Democrat ever since the 60s. And prior to that, family, what were we voting? Republican. Am I stating that you go out and vote Republican? Because I understand that the Democrats have traumatized the black community of the orange man, AKA Donald Trump, that he's a racist. But I always pose this question because I'm not a Republican and I am not a Democrat. I am apolitical, but hear me out. Has the orange man, Donald Trump, ever passed any legislation that targeted black people as a criminal class? Has Donald Trump ever wrote or ever signed any legislation that has put black people in a worse condition than we already has? Some of you are going to say, well, he's incited race riots and this, that, and the other. The only riot, allegedly, that he has ensued was a January 6th insurrection. But here's the thing. Some people believe that by not voting, they can send a message to the government that they are demanding reparations for the centuries of slavery and discrimination that we have endured. And that is absolutely correct. It is sending a message, and it has been very, very powerful, and we must stay on course. We must stay on code. But you're going to have some other people. You're going to have some other people on the other side of this. And I'll get to that, because I'm not voting until the government pays reparations. I'm not going to be part of a system that has oppressed my people for so long, and we continue to put the class in power that continues to pander to the black community but does nothing for the black community. And we're going to go over this, family. See, they always have strategies to divide the black vote. They would state that there is no one right or wrong answer to the question whether or not we should vote or should we. It is a personal decision that each individual must make for themselves. Well, family, that is the tactic of division they've been using on us for a very long time. There are some things that, I hate to say it, we must be monolithic on. And the only way to show power in this oppressive system, whether you believe it's oppressive or not, that's fine. The only way we're going to get what we owe, just like the Jewish Americans and the Jewish Holocaust survivors, as well as the Native Americans, is to stay on code just as they have. You're going to have Democratic shills to come out. And I know you've already seen hundreds of thousands of video clips that how they believe that voting is important. And even though I know that the system is not perfect, I vote because I want to make my voice heard. I want to let the government know that I'm not going to stand for the injustice that black people face every day. How can you do that in a system that doesn't, how can you do that in a system that backs the badge when black men and women are getting killed in the streets? How are you going to back a system that wrongfully accused black people more than any other group, even though we're the third largest population behind Hispanic people? When you look at the innocent projects around America in each and every state, black people are the number one group that is mostly exonerated from their crimes. That tells you that there's a gross negligence in the justice systems when it comes to black people. So why will you continue to support a system that is not supporting you? Why will you continue to contribute to a power structure that's not contributing to you? It boggles my mind, family. It boggles my mind. And we have to understand, this is some of the tactics that they're going to use. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to vote is up to each individual black person, which is true. And there is a right and wrong answer. If you are tired of the conditions that you are in, if you are tired of the treatment that you have been receiving, then we must understand, whether we disagree or agree on many other topics, there's one thing we should come down on code with. And that is the ability that you have and the God-given right that you have to withstand your vote until something tangible is on the table. Because they would tell you how important it is to be aware of your history and aware of the voting rights in the United States, and to make an informed decision about whether or not to participate in the electoral process. That is what they will tell you, family. Well, I'm here to tell you something else. In a nation where our ancestors were systematically oppressed, we need a new way to shift the balance of power. And like I stated before, not voting can send a very powerful message. To truly understand this strategy, we must consider our history. And a lot of times people are so tired of hearing our history, but family, history, our history here in America is the root cause of the issues that we see today. Have we perpetuated certain things and made them grotesquely worse? But of course we have. But again, we must look at those root causes that ended up in the situation we are today. A lot of you will listen to a lot of race slaving, bastardizing people, whether they're black, white, or indifferent and Asian, like your Thomas Sowell and all these other cats, or your Candace Owens and all these other people. Because from the era of slavery to Jim Crow and the ongoing battle against voter suppression, they love to bring that up, we have faced countless of obstacles. The non-vote is a potent form of protest against a system that has consistently marginalized black folk. Reparations are not just about a financial payout. It's about addressing systematic inequalities. By not voting, we put pressure on lawmakers to address this issue seriously. When the system sees that we're no longer participating in the system that ignores our pleas, it might just prompt them to act. Because family, haven't we tried everything? We've tried to pick apart certain policies and legislations that we're voting for. You know what? I don't really agree with everything that's going on, especially with Obama and his second term. So I'm just going to vote for affordable health care plan, the Obamacare plan. Well, you know what? I don't like the tax system here. I'm a business owner. I'm going to vote for Trump this time. Family, it doesn't matter what side you have picked. Either side really hasn't helped Black America at all. So it's not about picking a side. It's about picking the political party that has reparations on the table, as well as making Black Americans a protected class. The two most needed policies in Black America is the money that is owed to us by the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors, and two, making us a protected class. Just as well Joe Biden has done Asian Americans, and as well as Joe Biden has done Jewish Americans that are living here, so shall Black Americans be as well. But let me tell you something about Joe, and as I stated before about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is Kamala Harris as a white man. He's going to speak to the atrocities, the systematic oppression, the torture that Black people have been through. But instead of supporting reparation, he come clean off and states that he supports H.R. 40. H.R. 40 is a bill that supports a study of all the wrongdoing of America to see if reparation is justified. Well, family, let me tell you, they didn't do this for the Native Americans. They didn't do this for Ukraine, because we understand that Ukraine have received over 113 billion. Some people are even stating 300 billion, but I'm gonna go with the numbers and figures that I found, over 113 billion dollars. They can find money for each and every group, just as well as we're giving support to Israel. You know, when support, that means money. So let me remind you of the president you guys, majority of you guys, 87% of Black Americans voted for. This election is going to be one of the most important elections for Black people. Family, they are flooding America with illegal immigrants and fast-tracking them to citizenship in order to create a buffer class that is going to butt out Black Americans and have our vote obsolete. Because if you look at 500,000 Venezuelans, and we're not even talking about the millions of illegal Mexicans, illegal Costa Ricans, illegal Colombians, illegal East Indian folk, illegal Chinese folk, all of these people are benefiting from our illegal immigration policies that allow the catch and release program here in America. So family, I'm telling you this for a reason. It's for us to be on code. You may not agree with anything else, but this is the one time that we should stand up for ourselves as a collaborative group, because here's your president that you voted for.
Do support compensation for those families. Should the U.S. also compensate descendants of enslaved people? Do you support reparations for African Americans?
I support H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been proposed in Congress to establish a commission to look at reparations. But we shouldn't wait for that commission to do its work to do things that are reparative. Remember, we're not talking about a gift to anybody. We're talking about mending what was broken. We're talking about the generational theft of the wealth of generations of African Americans. And just crossing out a racist policy and replacing it with a neutral one is not enough to deliver equality. Harms compound, just like a dollar saved in its value compounds over time.
Sounds good.
So does the value of a dollar stolen. And that is why the United States must act immediately with investments in minority-owned businesses, with investments in health equity, with investments in HBCUs, and on the longer term, look at reparations so that we can mend what has been broken.
Vice President Biden, do you support
Here we go.
reparations?
Look, let me, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America, and we should invest in them. Everybody will benefit from it, every single American, and you should get used to it. This is a nation of immigrants. That's who we are. That's why we're who we are. That's what makes us different, and we should.
Well, family, let me tell you this. It is now a nation of immigrants, but it was never a nation of immigrants. This was a nation of Native Americans, slave owners, those who participated in systematic oppression, and the enslaved people, which we know today as the descendants of Black Americans. Family, we have a history that dates back to 1562 of being foundational Black Americans, African Americans, Black Americans, U.S. freedmen, whatever you want to label us at the time. But here's the thing. This was a country of Native Americans, slave owners, those who came over to participate, slave owners having plantations and the jobs that they created to build America on the backs of slaves, which were our ancestors and our forefathers, and we are their descendants. So we were never essentially immigrants, because when we came over in 1562, if you don't like that number, I'll give you 1619. Really doesn't matter, family. We were here before America was established, which was in 1776 when we were released from British rule on July 4th. So when we look at this, family, we're not immigrants. We're not immigrants. Now, you came over from the Caribbean, you came over from Africa after 1865, then yes, you're a family immigrant, maybe 2 or 3 generations removed, but nonetheless, Black Americans who are the descendants of slaves are not immigrants. So let's get that straight for the first thing. And secondly, family, did he answer the question? Did Joe Biden answer the question? We understand that Pete Buttigieg, he kind of talked around it and addressed a couple of things, kind of like Kamala Harris, right? But Joe Biden did not answer the question. He went right to immigration. And believe it, family, this was when he was running as vice president. He was running for president, and he is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And guess what we have done? We voted him in anyway. He totally ignored the question about reparation that was systematically held Black people from being at the economic bottom and actually have economic power and build generational wealth for our families to come. But no one's talking about generational wealth no more, right? But here's the thing. You still gonna vote because your ancestors fought for you to vote. No, they fought for you the right to vote. That gives you the option, family. It's kind of like going out with your friends. You're like, nah, I'm not going out tonight. I'm protesting, goddammit. Here's the point I'm making. This is the voice and hearts and minds of our people. He answered the question very clearly. He's clearly stated until the people on what side he's on, he is for migrants and not the American people. Power go out to that sister. What is Joe talking about? Question wasn't answered. That's crazy. Of course it wasn't. He said no in the beginning. He been against it the entire time. Divine states, what is he talking about? That's crazy. What is going on with this guy? I'm just reading, going down the page here, family. So is that a yes? Absolutely not. Another committee for another analysis for another 20 years. Why when you already know the history? Oh, really? He actually answered the question, but poster editing his answer about immigration questions instead. That's inaccurate. This has to be a mashup because what is Joe talking about? So when I bring up the tactic of non-voting, we have to understand in order for this to work, to put pressure on the political system, no matter the party, to get what is owed to us, it's a collective tactic. It's not about an individual, right? But a strategic show of solidarity. We must rally together to make a significant impact. The more Black Americans unite behind this tactic, the more powerful it holds. Let's not forget that this world is watching, because now Muslims are now stating that they're not going to vote for Joe Biden either. When we make moves, it sends a message internationally. Now Muslims Americans are even stating, I would never vote for Biden. Muslim and Arab Americans say their support was critical to Biden's win in Michigan of 2020. Some warn they won't back him again over the blanket support for Israel. Now, we understand that Muslim and Arab Americans only make up like 1.5% of the demographics here in America. So their vote is not as significant as they're stating. That's very, very inaccurate. Black Americans have always been the heartbeat and drum of the Democratic Party. When we opt out of the voting process, Republicans win. When we opt in of the voting process, the Democrats win. But family, when we totally opt out until something significantly changed, and we can't be wooed or fear-mongered like they did with Donald Trump. Oh, Donald Trump, a real racist. You saw what he did the first 4 years. He didn't do anything, family. He didn't do anything. Oh, he was speaking to his base, the rednecks and blue-collar workers of America who are inherently racist. Guess what, family? Democrats doing the same thing. They just do it a little bit different. And matter of fact, to make it go over more smoothly, the Democrats will rub you on your back and pat you on your butt. But at the end of the day, family, during the inauguration, they kick your ass out and you still don't receive anything. So now other groups are using some of the same tactics that Black Americans have been using, but we need to be more steadfast and more intentional on this tactic, because now it's gaining weight, now it's gaining traction, and now they're seeing how powerful we can be when we are a collective group, not a monolith, but a collective group with some sort of monolithic tactics nonetheless. Because other nations may look at how the United States deals with this issue and make their own judgments. It's a way to force the system's hand on the global stage. See, not just America, but other international groups may put pressure on America like, hey, you gave the Native American reparations, you gave the Jewish Holocaust survivors and their descendants reparation, you gave the Japanese people that you put in internment reparations. Now, here's a crucial part, family. Not voting isn't the end game. It's a means to an end. We must simultaneously engage in grassroots activism, advocacy, and education. By doing so, we show that we're willing to vote for change, not just for the sake of voting. Now, that's going to help us on many sorts of course, but it has to be two things on the table, or at least one, family, at least one. You already know what it is. That's called reparations. The second thing is making Black Americans a protected class. Now, of course, there are going to be many critics that's against this strategy. They're called Democratic shields. They're called Republican shields, because one of the two groups, now Republicans really don't care, but they still want your vote. They're going to adhere to Black business people, Black professionals, Black educators, Black scholars, etc. But even they know that majority of them are on the Democratic side, but they're still going to try to appease to some of them in order to gain maybe 5% of the Black vote. That was the 13% that didn't vote Democratic, which the Democratic vote received 87%. Stay with me. They may argue that not voting will lead to unfavorable policies for Black Americans. To this we say, voting has not always prevented unfavorable policies for us. It hasn't. It's about time we utilize a strategic tool to demand our rightful place in this nation. It's time out for all this other stuff, family. Not voting is not a rejection of the Democratic Republican process. It's a demand for a more equitable and just democracy. It's a call for reparations, for the acknowledgement of our history, and for a fair and equal future for Black Americans. That is what we must understand. The message is hitting so hard, family, that we now have celebrities, case in point, Cat Williams, are now speaking out about what Black Americans are owed, which is reparation, cash payments. So not that we should be looking for celebrities to speak up for the mass majority of Black Americans, but I will say this is a good thing. The more celebrities, the more entertainers that we have that stay on code, that speak to a specific message, this will inherently encourage more Black Americans not to vote until direct cash payments, reparations is on the table.
People, and I'm being honest with you, as Black people, we've never said this in history, but it's time for us to get reparations. Black people, it's our money, and when do we need it? You see that, white people? We didn't even rehearse that. That's how badly Black people need this money. Like, every one of us needs this. And white people, you need it too. You need it too. Aren't you ready to get this racism shit past us? Like, no white person in here has ever had a slave a day in your life. Don't you want to get this the fuck off of you? Pay those motherfucking reparations. Listen here, white people. We just gave $300 billion to Ukraine, and they can't even fight. They over there getting their ass whipped with all our shit. It's been in 500 months, they'd have made it 100 feet further than they started. This is ridiculous.
Where can I go watch this? So we have the voice of the people. We have the hearts of the people. We have the minds of the people. But people, let me tell you, black folk, all of this championing and cheerleading where people are speaking out and supporting reparations from the celebrity space, let me tell you, do not get distracted. Because in one flip of a coin's turn, they would then come out and tell you to vote Democrat. They would then come out and tell you be a liberal. They would then come out and tell you and vote for Joe Biden. They would then come out and tell you to vote for Kamala Harris. The same two people you just heard that is not in support of you receiving direct cash payments of reparations, but they are in support of the state of Israel and giving them support, which is money. They're in support of Native Americans receiving reparations. And I must point out, I must stress this so we understand. The current Native Americans are not the ones who went through the tragedies of their ancestors and their forefathers, but nonetheless, they are receiving federal money each and every month and each and every year in the form of reparations. That is, we must understand. You're going to have a lot of voting tactics encouraging you, coercing you, manipulating you, fear-mongering you into voting. Let me tell you, family, please don't fall for the trick bag once again. Our families, our ancestors, our civil rights movement, our activists have been falling for the trick bag ever since the 60s. They state, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Well, family, you not voting is your voice, stating that you're tired of this oppressive system, stating that you're tired you're not giving what you owe, stating that you're tired of other people receiving a protective class and not black Americans, who has been the most aggrieved group. So this is the power of your voice. Your vote is the power of your voice, and not just voting to vote, because that will have you believe if you don't vote, then you gave up your power. It's about making our voices heard in a more impactful way, because together as a unified community, we can leverage this strategy to create change, demand reparations, and work toward black empowerment.
But the minute the police kill one of us and we got to go to the streets, where they at? When it's time for us to fight for reparations, where they at? I just read an article the other day that most Americans are opposed to reparations, but they'll dance to your music. But at the end of the day, when it's time to distribute the resources, that's what matters. When it's time to distribute the resources, don't none of them want to see black people get what we are due as a result of the unfair forced labor of our ancestors for 2.5 centuries. How dare you say we're not entitled to reparations when we're the reason America is America? And so that's why we have to stop focusing on the social too much, because even with integration, right? Black people always talk about the social integration. If America truly believes in integration, prove it. Prove it. I'm 17% of the population, 12 to 17%. Give me 12 to 17% of your banks. Give me 12 to 17% of the homes.
So share your thoughts and comments below. Like and subscribe for more powerful decisions on black empowerment and systematic change. Until next time, stay empowered, stay informed, and let's make history together. Be one.